The following is intended for mature audiences only. Discretion is advised.
Thank you so much for downloading this episode of So What Do You Really Do? The podcast where I, your host, Deadair Dennis Maler, talks to artists and entertainers about their day jobs. And on this episode of the podcast, the voice does not get any better. It's not even great right now. Oh, I think this is just what my voice is going to be. It's not getting worse. For those who have been listening for a while, if you're a first-time listener, the people who have been listening for a while know what I'm talking about. For those first-time viewers and first-time listeners, welcome to the podcast. What I'm referring to is my voice. As a voiceover artist, radio personality, I guess former radio personality, actor, comedian, and now tour guide narrator for Boston Duck Tours. My voice is all I have, and I've never lost it before. I've never sounded this, well, I've always sounded bad, but I've never sounded this weak voiced. But it's after, 20 to 25 tours a week or plus. I did almost 30 tours the other week, Memorial Day weekend. And now I'm hitting my stride. This is how I sound all the time now. There's no straining. It's not getting worse. But the problem is it's not getting better. It's not getting back to where it's supposed to be. So that's kind of the worry. And this podcast I recorded with my friend Brian Kiley, comedian and writer for Conan for 27 years and writer on the final season for Ellen DeGeneres' daytime talk show. He and I recorded when my voice was pretty much at its worst. So apologies in advance for how I sound, and apologies for the past, how I regularly sound, because it sounds like a truck full of screaming babies crashing into a nitroglycerin factory. It's cavernous and nasally, and it is my voice, and it is sounding worse. This is actually one of those other podcasts that I always talk about where it's my pandemic friends who I made during the pandemic through Zoom comedy. Brian Kiley, I opened for him, Flappers Comedy, every Tuesday for a month. I hosted for him, and we had a lineup of comedians that we performed together, and just repetitiously, him and I became friends over the internet. We performed together in the North Carolina Comedy Festival back in 2021, which was fun. We got to hang out, have lunch, and we'll talk about it in the thing. But yeah, it's when I was in LA, we didn't get to hang out. When he comes to Boston, we didn't get to hang out. But we enjoy each other's company. We're friends, and I'm really glad he came on the show because we got to talk to a writer for a TV show for somebody who was there for a long time. And we also got to talk to somebody who was positive about the COVID-19 Zoom comedy world. Those are the things that you don't hear a lot. A lot of people talk negatively about Zoom comedy. Brian was hitting the shows every night. Laurie Kilmartin, former guest of the podcast, Laurie Kilmartin, also very heavy into Zoom comedy. So is her co-host of her podcast, Jackie Cation, Maria Bamford, Ron Funches. There's so many people that did it during the pandemic. They got on their webcams and did comedy for people. But what you hear about is other people, how bad it was, how much I hated it, blah, blah, this, that, whatever. It's good and bad like every other show. Is it like performing live for a person? No. What do I always say to it? It's methadone for a performer's addiction. And I enjoyed it. I got to meet friends. There was something good that came out of the pandemic. Whether I've successfully followed up with all those friendships or, I don't want to say take advantage of, because that sounds like I was manipulating things, but it's like, did I capitalize on my relationships? Not necessarily. But the future is still yet to be written in my career in comedy. So we shall see how things go. Anyway, please enjoy my conversation with comedian and writer Brian Kiley. Before you tell me all about the flight, it's a good thing that you were delayed and I wasn't, because I caught a huge cold.
Oh, okay.
And I would have felt terrible if I gave someone else this cold.
Yeah, no, I felt
That's why I didn't come by Saturday after the show, because I was like so congested and I lost my voice from doing 9 Boston Duck Tours this weekend.
Yeah, how were the Duck Tours?
It is going to be an interesting job. I'm literally giving everything up, with the exception of just keeping one trivia gig, and I'm still doing stand up when I can. but I've given up everything else, like all my freelance work, all my editing work. I'm focusing everything, like all my financial eggs are in this one duck tour basket, and I have to hope that it pays off.
I love the duck tour. We went when my kids were little. My daughter was a baby when we did it.
Well, it sounds like next time you come around, you're gonna have to try and do it again.
I would love it. We did it in Boston. We did it in Philadelphia. We did it, I think, in Seattle. Is that right?
There's lots of cities have those vehicles. Weirdly, it's not a chain. None of the other cities are connected to each other, as far as I know.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they're all independent. They all kind of like, even at one time here in Boston, there was a second company doing duck tours that was not affiliated with the Boston Duck Tours.
Crazy. We had Captain Splash.
Captain Splash.
Do you have a stage name?
I do. I am a ukulele playing punk rocker named UK Lee.
Nice. Love it. That's so great.
I picked the thing most closest to my own actual personality.
Yeah, good for you. Good for you. We loved it though. It's so cool. And those are amazing boats, / trucks or whatever they are,
Yeah, basically. They're trucks that are boats and boats that are trucks.
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah, sorry. I mean, why did your flight? Is there I know I tried to sympathize with you with your flights from LA to Boston when I was like, oh, in February I had similar issues. My issues were because of snow. Why were your flights getting canceled? Why was it so difficult to get to Boston?
They had some kind of mechanical thing. Who knows? They could be full of shit, but. And then our flight was delayed, 4 hours going back. So we had 2 nightmare flights there and back.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. I mean, and especially on top of you're only coming in for 2 days. So you're getting in your jet lag, you're overtired. And then you have to perform. It's a different thing. It was oh, we're going for vacation. But you also have to be up and present and aware of what's going on.
That's true.
So how was the Boston Comedy Festival?
It was good. It was really good. And my kids came, which was, I wasn't sure that they were going to be able to. So that made it great. It was, they enjoyed the competition. I was kind of watched with half an ear because I was kind of had to prepare for my thing and all that stuff. But yeah, it was really good. It was a very memorable event,
I mean, especially not just, you're performing in the most prestigious, one of the most prestigious comedy festivals in the country. You're invited to, but also they awarded you, was it Lifetime Achievement? Is that what that award was?
It was. And I actually had to give I gave a little speech, which, it's not, that's what I was so nervous about because it's I don't go around giving speeches. So that was a whole different thing,
Yeah, that you can't give a one-liner speech.
Exactly. Yeah. So I just kind of I wanted to explain to them who I was, and I just kind of documented my career and told some anecdotes and things and tried to thank the people who've helped me out and all that stuff. So
yeah, well, you had to talk earnestly for once in front of people. You had to open up emotionally. Whereas usually your one-liners are very, very devoid of emotion.
Yes, exactly. And I actually got choked up on stage, which never happens except maybe when I was bombing in Providence.
Well, I'm glad. Here's the thing when it comes to Lifetime Achievement Awards. You're not an old man, but you're not young. Your career's not over. It's here's the award for your lifetime. You're you still got a couple decades left under your belt, hopefully.
Well, I was worried that I'm are they telling me it's time to go? Because, I'm vaguely insulted by this award.
Hey, everything you did was great up until now.
And we've had enough of you, mister.
Well, I'm sure, did you ever compete in the BCF before you left for LA back when they were doing it in the early years?
No, I never did. The last contest I remember Well, I did do the Johnny Carson Festival in 2014, which I didn't realize it was a contest until I got there. And then I did the Johnny Walker thing in Boston years ago. What I remember at that, we had the auditions were in the afternoon. Everyone had 2 minutes. And there were 110 people or something. And if you passed with your 2 minutes, they picked 8 people to go on to the finals, to the finals that night. And one guy came in off the street, just someone who wasn't and he told this long street joke. And after 2 minutes, they shut your microphone off. So he, in effect, came in and did a 2-minute setup to a joke. And then they were like, thank you very much. And never got to the punchline.
Sometimes cutting them off before the end might actually be the most beneficial thing you can do to certain people in comedy.
That's true.
Well, I just got to imagine that that's going from, like, I can't imagine it yet because I'm not at that point in my career, but like competing in a competition and then being awarded an award at a competition, like that's, and like I got to imagine that's a surrealistic feeling. Like I just got my first invite to a festival, not, hey, submit, hey, pay a submission fee. I just got an email from a festival in New Orleans that's like, hey, we want you to be a featured person in this festival. We'll get you everything set up and take it out. And I was like, you want me? You actually want me?
Oh my God.
Not like we're going to give you a spot because you paid money.
Right. Oh yeah, that's huge. And I feel like all these little steps you take are all, and then sometimes people are like, "No, we still want you to pay money to come to our."
Well, with the with coming here, also, it's got to be, I know you've been back once. During the pandemic when we were hanging out on Zoom shows. We had talked. It was a while before you were able to come back home because of everything going on. But this isn't the first time you've been back to Boston since the pandemic, right? I think there was one other time you were in town.
Yes, I came in so my daughter went to BC and she graduated in 2020, but the pandemic, of course. So I came in that March of 2020 to help her pack up and bring stuff back. And then her graduation, the actual graduation, didn't take place until October of 2021. And
I remember you telling me you were coming in town for the graduation almost a year and a half afterwards, but so you haven't been back since 2021 then.
Right. Yeah. COVID's kind of messed everything up. I used to come back once a year. Then when my daughter was here, I'd try to come back twice a year, but, with COVID, I feel like we were all just kind of stuck in where we were,
Yeah. I mean, like my family's in Baltimore. It's 400 miles away. I live in Boston. Your family's in Boston. You live in LA. It's entire across the country. I'm okay with not seeing my family. It doesn't bother me that, like, in fact, I wish there were still more pandemics. So I'm like, sorry, Ma, I can't come. Sorry, don't want to get you sick. But you like your family. So I can understand how that was the struggle for you. Like, I want to come see my family.
Well, I was,
there's good things that came out of it.
In terms of what, the pandemic being?
Yeah, there was good things that came out of the pandemic. I mean, you wanted to see your family, so that's a bad thing. But I mean, the amount of connections and friendships that I made through doing Zoom comedy during that year and a half, 2-year period. Like when I went to LA in February, I was meeting people who I made very deep connection relationships with online, and they got to see them for the first time in person. And it didn't feel like I was meeting somebody new. It felt like I was meeting an old friend already,
Right.
So I feel like, I don't know if anyone else came out with that kind of connection to people between like Clubhouse, Zoom, Google Hangouts, and other of these things. I felt like I actually was seeing real friends. I don't know how, your experience with it is, because you are somebody who did a ton of Zoom comedy.
I did do a ton of Zoom shows, and I did meet a bunch of comics from around the country, some of whom I've still never met in person. And one I see, like, I know, like, my writing group now, we just meet on Zoom. We're like, wait, why? It's so much easier to just do this and not have to drive an hour and drive an hour home and be able to chat, all that stuff. It's like, nope, go in the other room, have your meeting for an hour, and then you're done. Ooh, love it,
Well, some people initially shunned the whole Zoom thing. Like I said, you embraced it. What was it about Zoom comedy for you that made you like, oh, I'm going to jump on this and use it?
Well, I know some people didn't do it at all. And to me, it was better than nothing. I mean, one nice thing, it was nice to walk in the other room, do a set, and then you come back and it's like, all right, well, I was back 10 minutes later, I mean, Zoom shows were difficult where I'd come off and my wife would go, how was your show? I would say, I have no idea. I don't know if you felt like that, but I have a terrible habit of when I'm on stage, I'll zero in on that person who's not laughing, and with Zoom, I had to find the one person who was laughing, everyone's got their cameras off, and you're like, wait, is anyone here? And then you're like, oh, that guy's laughing. Okay, I'm going to focus on him. So, but I found it was better than nothing. I could still write stuff during the day and try it out that night. It was like, and some days that was about as much human contact as I had. So I looked forward to it,
Yeah, there's sometimes where I miss doing like Clubhouse and Zoom shows where I'm like in the middle of the afternoon, like, oh man, I wish I could just open an app and hang out with 5 to 10 people and share our little inside jokes.
Yes,
or,
yeah.
At night, instead of going out and traveling somewhere, I can just come down here, do a show, and then take my dog, go right for our walk and go right to bed and satiate that need for contact. Yeah. And I don't find the person not laughing. I find I'm so attuned to looking for laughs just because I've become that way because I worked in radio, I worked in TV. I'm already accustomed to like talking to nobody in a room by myself.
Well, it was also nice, I could do a show here at 7 p.m. and people in Boston friends of mine in Boston would be watching at 10 p.m., So that happened over Zoom. And also what Flappers would do, a club here in Burbank, they would have me book the show in effect. They go, okay, do you want a headline? And I said, no, let me host. I'll book the show. And then I could have a friend of mine from New York and introduce her. And then I'd have a friend of mine from Boston introduce him. And then I'd have a friend from LA introduce her. So it was kind of nice to have that, you're having all your comedy friends all around the country doing a show and you're kind of like hosting a party.
Yeah. I mean, there was a buddy of mine put me in charge of like one Sunday a month show, even after the pandemic for KO Comedy. And I'm pretty sure you did one of the KO.
Yeah,
shows.
yeah.
That was the best part. It's like all the people I don't get to see all the time, I can book them. And there was a point where I was like, oh, I should probably put a Boston comedian on. I was like, but I want to hang out with my New York friends and my LA friends and my Austin friends and my Chicago friends and my Boise, Idaho friends. Like every time I thought about who to book on it, I did not book anyone who I knew personally day-to-day operations. I was like, I could see them. I want to see my other friends.
Sure. I do think a funny thing over Zoom is sometimes I would finally meet the person and I'd done a dozen or so Zoom shows with them. And it's like, wait, you're really tall? I thought you were really short or whatever. You know what I mean? Like sometimes they don't look the same in person. Or
we all look shorter in these little boxes.
Yeah.
Well, I honestly did that to your friend Dana Eagle. When I came to LA, I was doing a show at Burbank. She was in the other room. I come out and I'm just sitting talking, hanging out with her talking. And it was like 45 minutes went by when the light bulb went off. She was like, oh, wait, Deadair Dennis. Yes, we've done Zoom shows together. I just thought you were just some new comedian who came to town. She was like, I didn't recognize you without all your equipment and backdrops and everything behind you.
So funny.
Like, I didn't even introduce her. I was just like, hey, Dana, what's up? And she's like, hey, what's up? And we're talking. And it's like, I've been wondering this whole time who you were. It's driving me crazy.
That sounds like her.
Do you think you adapted to Zoom better because when you were writing, I think were you when the pandemic hit, you were still writing for Conan, right?
I was, yeah.
So you already had moved. Did Conan's writing room move to a Zoom setup during the pandemic as well? Is that why you think you may have been adapted it because you were already doing it during the day for work?
Yeah, that's true. That's true. And I do think my style lends itself to Zoom in that you can do a quick joke. I think it's harder to do a long story over Zoom and not be interrupted.
Oh boy, as a person who tells long stories, boy, do I know that.
Right? Because I found my longer jokes even had more trouble than just a quick joke, you know? It's so easy to get interrupted over Zoom. I was doing a show with my friend Wayne Fetterman, and halfway through his act, you know, who's ever
former guest of the podcast.
Yes. Oh, good. Who's ever interrupting my who's ever the loudest on Zoom gets the mic, so to speak, you know? So he got interrupted. This old woman, he's doing his set, and mid punchline, this old woman starts saying, I'm watching the comedy show. I'm watching the comedy show. And we never heard the punchline, and we were dying. Oh, my God.
There was a lot of unexpected comical moments.
Yes.
You know, somebody coming in the room screaming and yelling, or people's kids like, Dad, why are you making so much noise?
Yes. There's a lot of that.
When everything started during the pandemic for you as a writer, switching over to the what did a writer's room on Zoom look like in the case of a late night TV show? Because I've talked to a couple other writers. Some of them basically did like hourly check-ins. Some other people kind of did like 8 hours in a room together, just silently contemplating and just tapping on their pens.
Oh my
God.
I can't imagine that. No, we had 1 or 2 meetings a day. Also, what happened was, you know, Laurie Kilmartin and I would continue to write monologue jokes for him, and he would read them. You know, he's doing the show with us on his phone at home. And so he would read these jokes off note cards. And then after a while, he's like, doing these jokes to no one, I don't want to do that anymore. So he stopped doing that after a while. What they would do was, if you got a sketch approved, and you couldn't really do sketches with multiple people in it unless it was like a married couple that was like in lockdown together or something like that. But I wrote a sketch where it was about a guy who his business was, he had a package stealing business from people's porches. And he was so overwhelmed that he was looking to hire people to join his porch packaging stealing business. So the bit was just him talking to camera. So it was one of the actors we use, Matt McCarthy, who he just did it on his own. You know, we sent him the script, and he just did it at his house alone, on his own phone or whatever. You know, so we had to kind of work around things like that.
Yeah, I can't imagine having, like, I did a couple of like single person sketch ideas at the beginning of the pandemic to get like re-familiar with like Premiere editing, like to jump back. Like I haven't used Premiere. I haven't done video editing since 9/11. And so it's like, oh, let me relearn while I have this time. So I had to create sketches. And it was so hard creating one man sketch. There's one sketch literally that I had written forever that is mostly one person. And then I literally had to play my other self and go, nobody's going to get this. I didn't change enough clothes to realize that I'm looking at myself as a different person. They're like, why is he now in the chair?
So funny.
So you switched to sketch writing. When the announcement of Conan that Conan show was coming to an end, what was your feelings? I know we kind of talked about it during the pandemic, but
yeah. No, I mean, it's that thing of, I wish it kept going, but I was also grateful. I was there 27 years, so I really can't complain too much.
Yeah, you've been with him since almost the beginning, right?
I started 6 months into the first season, so that was a long run, and I still enjoyed it. If it kept going, I would have kept going with him. And then I was able to jump on the last season of Ellen, which was fun. But yeah.
Which, by the way, at that point, you get out of one show that's canceling, you move to another show, they're canceling that. It's like, at what point do you feel like, is it me?
Oh, definitely. I was thinking of trying to join shows that I hate just to get them off the air.
That's a perfect plan. I feel like everything I get a part of, I somehow sabotage. Maybe that's what I'll start doing, is joining my enemies.
Yeah. Yes. But yeah, I we had a nice long run. It's you always want to keep going as long as you can.
Well, it's good that you never got burned out on it, because some people can, they want to change up, they want different, or they get it's monotonous. It's nice to hear that you did something for literally almost 3 decades and was still a fan of it.
Yes, I mean, I certainly would have liked to have written for jump to a sitcom or something, but with having kids and stuff, you're afraid that what if the show gets canceled? And that's happened to some writers. They leave to a sitcom, and the sitcom get canceled, and they're out of work. So, I as much as I would have liked the variety, I did like being able to put my kids through college and all that kind of thing. And, I got to work with really funny people every day and laugh my ass off every day. So I loved it. I can't, I wish, I want more of it. Let's, I want to get in another writer's room.
Well, so you were part of 2 amazingly, long and well-known talk shows that you're writing monologue jokes for. Both of them are done with and over. What's the plan now? Like, are you trying to find another show to write on? Are you trying to change gears? Are you even thinking about going back to touring lifestyle?
Well, it's funny. I have been doing a lot of stand-up, and I've been touring. The shows are fun. The flying and the long drives and all that stuff, the wear and tear is hard.
Especially after this last weekend, yeah.
It was. I know. It was a nightmare getting in and out of Boston. But I'd love to get on a show. I've been writing pilots and things, so I'd love to sell a show or create a show. And, if an existing show wanted to have me in the room to have punch-up jokes or whatever, sounds good to me. I'd love that, too,
Well, there's enough, former Boston people who've come through The Simpsons. They were always, like that's how Dana Gould got his job, just being a comedian, and they brought him in for punch-up. Just talk to enough Boston guys, like somebody will get you in that room. Enough Harvard guys.
I hope so. Yeah. Let's spread that rumor around.
By the way, I feel like the old aunt is like, what you do to do your comedy thing? You should go on that Saturday Night Live. Why don't you just go on Saturday Night Live?
I know my sister's always recommending shows I should write on. It's like, yeah, I'd be happy to. I'm not saying no.
It's not like I'm the one making the decisions. Well, do you think writing for a talk show would prepare you for writing and show running, or do you think that's a skill that you developed before? Well, before you answer that question, let's go back and talk about what got you into comedy, because you do a ton of writing. Prior to being a comedian, were you big into writing? Were you a big writer growing up?
It's funny. When I was in high school, I wrote sports for I covered our high school hockey team and baseball team. So I had like every week, I had a little column talking about the games that week. So, yeah, I mean, I guess in effect, I started getting paid to write when I was 15, writing sports for those 3 years. And I did want, as a kid, I'd watched the Dick Van Dyke Show, and I was like, I'd like to be a comedy writer when I grew up. So I used to write jokes, and I would save them for when I needed them. And I didn't know how to go about it. I didn't know how people got those jobs. So I didn't know how people were, because there really weren't comedy clubs when I was a kid that I knew of, So, yeah, I mean, I always, I would say since I was about 12, I wanted to be in comedy as a comedian or a comedy writer or whatever. Yeah.
That's interesting because like using Dick Van Dyke is a great example of a very few small thing, like a real actual look into how a TV show gets written, because that's the entire show takes place in a writer's room. Prior to that, what did you have? Like, I don't even think prior to that. After that, the only other thing that really gave you an inside look of TV was what, with Olivier, Laurence Olivier did a sketch show, a movie about a sketch show, a show within a show. What is it? It was just in my brain. It just went right out of it as I was preparing to introduce it. Show of Shows. The movie Show of Shows. Yeah, that was the only other look to like behind the scenes, and then comes along 30 Rock, which is the absurdist version of a show within a show, and so you never really saw how the inner workings of TV goes. So it's interesting that you watched the Dick Van Dyke Show and you were like, because I remember watching reruns of the Dick Van Dyke Show and like, oh, this is interesting. Look at one of them type and one of them talk. That's as far as I got in my brain about it.
And I still like, that's a show that still holds up for me when I watch reruns, Well, this is a terrible story. I shouldn't tell the story, but I actually bummed out Dick Van Dyke because we had a joke. He was on a show called Diagnosis Murder, and CBS canceled the show. So we had a joke about CBS decided to cancel the show when they realized all their viewers died 4 years ago. I wrote that joke and Conan did it, and then it was in Entertainment Weekly, and apparently Dick Van Dyke saw it and he bummed out, and Conan had to send him an apology letter. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm bumming out my hero here,
I mean, it's one thing to have to apologize for a joke that you wrote. Apologize for a joke from somebody else, though. You're like just sitting in your room, like, do I also have to send the apology?
Oh. And then he ended up doing the show. He couldn't have been nicer. I got to meet him. I didn't reveal that I wrote that joke or anything. But it was such a treat to meet that guy after all he did for me, Well,
at least that's a positive story of meeting your heroes, even though if you made them sad.
Yes. You can make your hero sad sometimes.
So if you knew since a teenager you wanted to grow up to be a comedian, what was your path from childhood to becoming an actual comedian? Did you put anything into effect that you, like here at Emerson, if a 12-year-old now wants to become a comedian, they can literally set their life to go to Emerson College, graduate with a degree in comedy, and then you have to figure everything out from there. That piece of paper doesn't get you a job at a comedy club, but It gets you on the path.
It's so true. I didn't know how to go about it. I just knew I wanted to do this thing. But when I was a sophomore in college, I saw my first live comedy show. And the headliner was Barry Crimmins.
Bearcat.
Who I thought was great. And I met him after the show. And we ended up meeting for coffee. And I brought some jokes that he critiqued. And he let me come to the Ding Ho for free whenever I wanted, which I went all the time. And then I took a summer school class at Emerson, taught by Dennis Leary.
Oh wow! So what years were you in college? When was this happening?
In the early '80s.
Okay, so basically the tail end of the late '70s, early '80s comedy boom.
Yeah, so I started early '80s. I was at Boston College, and taking that class. Then they recommended that I keep going. So I would go to the Ding Ho and I'd go to the Comedy Connection, and I started getting little $20 gigs $30 gigs, whatever, $50 gigs if I was lucky when I was in college. And then I started doing it full time when I graduated.
What did you graduate? What did you end up going to college for?
I was an English major.
Okay. I mean, that's kind of in the path of that. Like that's, you know, it teaches you the discipline of writing. It teaches you the imagery of wording.
Yep.
Yeah. So you were already, you had a plan. You had a plan. You're downplaying yourself and like, oh, I don't know how to get there. What you did is you went to school to learn about words, to be a guy that used words to make money. See, you always sell yourself short, Brian.
I had a vague plan. I didn't know. I had a very cloudy plan that I knew somehow I was determined to get there. I just didn't know how, really. But, you know, I'm glad that it worked out.
Well, we look back now here in Boston at the Ding Ho, which is, you know, like it's. I mean, Barry Crimmins has that documentary about him growing up, and his. If you want a sad story, watch Barry Crimmins' documentary. But the Ding Ho's an institute to us here. Not a lot of people know about it outside of here.
My friend Fran Solomita made a movie called When Stand Up Stood Out. That was about the time period back in Boston.
Yeah, there's that one as well. So it's like, did you realize at the time when you were going to the Ding Ho that it was as pivotal as we remember it as is now? Like when you're in that time period going to the Ding Ho, was there a moment where you're like, this is like, this is it. This is the comedy club.
I did think it was a very special place. Like I felt like I had stumbled on to this, I couldn't believe that I was there part of it and that I knew those guys and yes, there was a romantic quality to it. I mean, believe me, there were bad shows there sometimes and, whatever, but the whole thing was so exciting, and I was in awe of those headliners there, Stephen Wright and Mike Donovan and all those guys. Kenny Rogerson, Tingle, and all those guys. So yeah, I was so excited to be part of that scene.
What made you decide to leave Boston?
Well, it's funny. I kind of went kicking and screaming because even when I started at Conan, my wife was a VP of a company. So, we didn't want to pick up and move. And also, I only had 13-week contracts. So it was kind of like, well, we don't know how long this is going to go. So they would let me write from home 1 or 2 days a week.
You were still living in Boston when you started writing monologue jokes for Conan?
I was.
Oh, I never knew that.
Yes, and then I probably stayed a little too long, but and then I think once my wife left her job, it was kind of like, okay, let's what are we doing here? So we moved to New York, and then I was in New York for a bunch of years, and then I came out with Conan when the show moved to LA. Well,
how did you get the monologue writing job while living in Boston? I just assumed you were in New York, that you had already moved to New York and got the job.
No. Well, what happened was Conan, there was a couple of Boston comics that got hired there. My friend Tom Magna and Chuck Sklar, and they were writing his monologue, and somebody got fired. And at the time, I was writing a lot of topical jokes for my act when I would just go out in clubs. I would, if I did 45 minutes, I would do 25 minutes of topical jokes and then 20 minutes of so when I got my job, I actually lost 25 minutes of material right away. So I was in the habit of, in those days, getting the newspaper, sitting down and writing jokes for the newspaper every day. So when they asked me to submit a packet, a bunch of those jokes I'd been doing in my act. The thing with topical jokes, you have to replan it. You can't be up there talking about the Eisenhower administration or whatever. You've got to keep keep replenishing it and keep it current. But I some of those jokes I was doing in my act, and then I wrote some new ones and sent the packet in, and they. So the writer's packet for me was just a monologue packet. So it was a packet of about 50 jokes. And they called me and said, okay, you start tomorrow.
Well, this is just to point out timing. Like to do that now is easy. You put it together. If you have the packet ready, you have it within minutes. In 1996, when Conan started, you literally had to either pack it into a manila envelope and mail it to them, or were you faxing it to them? I mean, that was the height of technology, fax machines.
I know. And I think I remember having to go to like the local copy store and have them, hey, can you fax this to NBC, you know? Yeah, it's kind of nutty to think about.
Was that when you were working from home writing for Conan, did you have to fax the jokes to him, or was there a phone call, or how did that process work?
Yes. I mean, I would fax stuff in, and then sometimes I'd be on the phone with the other writers and we'd be spitballing. And sometimes, you know, the funny thing about comedy is sometimes you say something in the room to make the room laugh, and they go, that's good, let's put that. And that happened to me at Ellen. Do you do Wordle?
I know what it is, but I don't do it now. I'm not that smart.
So when Wordle started, we were at Ellen and Wordle started, and I said, writing for that's going to be the easiest job in the world. You know, you show up at noon. How about Dwell? Dwell is good. Okay, I'll see you guys tomorrow. You know? And I was just kidding around the group. And they go, that's good. And then they put it, and she did that in the monologue the next day. I was like, okay, I didn't even realize I was working. I just thought I was joking around in the room. You know? Well, sometimes at Conan, you said a joke to make the room laugh, and then put it on, and I'm like, I was just kidding. I wasn't, I didn't think that was appropriate for the show or whatever. So that stuff happens all the time.
Is there one that never worked out where like everyone in the room laughed at it, and then when it went into air, it just went whoosh, down the drain in the audience? Is there one that you can remember?
Yes. I remember one time, it was just a bad crowd, or the jokes were bad, or the combination of both, whatever, but the monologue did not go well. Mm-hmm. So the next day, Conan comes in my office. He's like, how do you feel when you send me out there with that? And what I told him was, if you've ever seen the Hitchcock movie Rear Window?
Very well, very much, yes.
Yeah. So there's a scene where, Jimmy Stewart's got two broken legs, and he thinks his neighbor, Raymond Burr, has murdered his wife. So he sends his girlfriend, Grace Kelly, in to investigate when Raymond Burr is out of the apartment. And Raymond Burr comes home early and catches her and starts manhandling her. I said, I feel like Jimmy Stewart watching this going, oh no.
And he's Grace Kelly in the audience is Raymond Burr. I mean, I got to imagine purchasing a fax machine was like, I'm buying this thing for work was a big, huge kind of deal. Like, I have a studio here. I built this studio out of spare parts that I stole from my job in radio. Then when I can actually afford, like when I was doing it enough and I could afford to buy an actual microphone that wasn't stolen, I was like, when I left radio and became a freelance podcast person, I was like, this is my job area. This is like, I have a room to do my work in. In the 90s, was that the same feeling? It was like, got to go to Staples and buy a fax machine with all these bills, with all these checks from Conan.
Yes, and I do remember when my son was a year old, sometimes we'd get the phone would ring, and we'd go answer the phone. But if we got a fax, you just kind of let the fax come in, and you wouldn't go to the other room. And he would be standing there like, blah, 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 not speaking yet, but like, the thing is ringing. Like, why aren't you going to get it? And he was always bewildered as a baby of like, why does sometimes you answer the phone and sometimes you don't?
Well, I remember because working radio, doing morning radio, we were getting prep service by fax. So every morning, right at like 4 a.m., fax machine would go off. and you would get a stack of paperwork this big coming from prep services. And you just take them and sort through them. And then you'd sort through them. And every once in a while, you'd find like, or in the middle of like 2 a.m. or 3 p.m., you would get a fax for no reason. You'd pull out and it's spam. It's like a sale ad that they just faxed to you. Were you getting spam faxes? Like, I got a fax at work one day. It's like, make your penis bigger. I'm like, I'm going to throw this away.
Yeah, when I would get notes that said that, they were just from my wife. They weren't spam. They were just saying, make your penis bigger,
All right, so you eventually moved to New York and then eventually to LA. That's Rab. You say kicking and screaming. That was a conversation, that you and your wife had to have. Like, do we continue to do this? Do we follow through on this? How did that conversation between you and your wife go?
Well, once her job ended, and then it was kind of like, we certainly, and I had a good job, and we did, you had to, we wanted to keep working, and then we had kids to take care of, and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, I think we did think. When I started Conan, the show was a little bit shaky in the beginning, and
yeah, I mean, that's got to be a nerve-wracking feeling where you're doing a thing and then you're seeing every day in the public eye where they're like, it's not working out for this big old tall redhead guy. You're like, if it don't work out for him, it doesn't work out for me.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, I guess there's always that thing. Like, there's so many jobs writing, but I guess when it comes to like crew work, like I've done crew stuff because sound guy, right? Obviously, I'm going to do crew work on small productions and stuff like that. I feel like the feeling amongst crew is there's always another job out there. But when you're a performer, or when you're in the performance side of it, when you're on the entertainment side, when you're directly related to like writing, directing, starring, being in those things, I guess I always thought that because they're not meritocracy when you're a performer. It's not based on your merit. It's based on, do you fit this role?
Yes, there's so many factors, and certainly it helps. But, and I know people who they waited their whole life to get their own sitcom, and they get their sitcom, and then it's canceled after 1 or 2 episodes, and they're devastated, So.
Oh, I didn't know you were friends with John Mulaney.
Well, he's one of them, it's so true. It's so many of them. But luckily, he's doing okay. Don't worry about him. But yeah, I mean, that's a real thing. Or even getting a writing job in a sitcom, which you finally made it, and then the show gets canceled after a couple episodes, and you're back out in the streets. So I was certainly very lucky to be on such a long-running show.
Well, it shows that, it shows your talent, that you were a part of it for that long, that you're able to prove that you're able, because you went from one amazingly popular show to another amazingly popular show. I mean, is there outside of Oprah, is there a bigger talk show than Ellen at the time?
I sent Oprah a packet, and that whole, and you get a car and you get a car. I did something very similar. I pitched, and you get a fax machine, and you get a fax machine.
Well, you've already written a pilot that's gone around the festival circuit, right? Didn't you and Mary Gallagher do a pilot together, My Therapist?
We did. It was to Be My Therapist. So we shot 5 episodes of a web series, and it got us into Montreal, and we got meetings from it and that kind of thing. And so what happens in these things, there are people that I've met from that who they ended up passing on that idea, but they want, every time I have a new thing, they're happy to take a look. So that kind of building those relationships, you hope that something ultimately comes from it, And it was very fun to be in Montreal and to put our web series in front of a crowd and that kind of thing.
Was it easy working alongside just somebody else writing story and structure and stuff like that? I'm sure monologue jokes is just pitch joke, pitch joke, pitch joke. It's a room full of people joking around. I'm sure that's an easy concept. That's an easy room to be in. But when it's you and one other person sitting around, like, here's this character, here's their arc, here's the story. This is how. Did you and Mary get along? Was there a little bit of friction between the two of you while working?
Absolutely, and also she's such a terrific actress. So shooting with her, I kind of let her. It's like I just tried not to get in the way, and her, yes, writing together was great, and I do think you have to have the right chemistry with someone, and luckily we had that, and would make each other laugh, and we felt like we had similar sensibilities, which helps, because there are people that I think are funny, but their sensibilities are too different for me or something, So yeah, that was a dream gig.
Yeah, I found I don't work well with others. I can do I can do like a group collaboration, like where we're talking about like joke structure in like a writing room. But the few times I've tried to get together with people and work on like, let's write a script together, and I'm like, I'm okay without doing this without you. Let's write separately, and then we'll have our own projects.
Well, there is. I mean, it depends on the person. There are people who, they always say they're gonna get together and then they never do, or it's just people that, you need someone with a good work ethic. You also need somebody who, you don't want to work with that person that they only like their ideas. You know what I mean? So you want to be with that person where that you like each other ideas, and there's not that sort of ego of it's got to be my thing or whatever, that you can that you can agree on and work together. It's not that's true. It's not an easy relationship, but when it works, I'm so appreciative,
Do you think you became a better collaborator because you had to work in a room with people so much, or do you think you just naturally that way?
Yes, no, I think that definitely helped. And one thing I had to learn at Conan was you couldn't hold on to the jokes that you loved. That if you loved a joke and they couldn't do it for whatever reason, you just had to let it go. And I think with your act, the jokes are so near to your heart. But writing for a TV show or whatever, they use that expression, you have to kill your darlings. And when you're writing scripts, sometimes you have to take out a line that you love, it doesn't quite fit, or whatever the reason is. So it really doesn't help the story move the story forward or whatever. So working at Conan, we were generating so much stuff, and not everything could make it to air, and some things that you loved didn't make it to air. So you had to kind of learn to let go and not hold on too tight to those things.
What's one joke that you kept trying to give them that you had to kill and nobody would ever accept? What's the one that you're like, I always wish this joke would have gotten through?
There was a sketch idea. You know how there was always, like, The Office was originally a British show, and Sanford and Son was originally a British show, and All in the Family was originally a British. So I pitched this idea that Conan was originally a British show, and so basically we had yeah. So, and Conan loved the idea, and the idea of he was going to play the British version of him doing Conan, and with a British accent, and just, all the silliness that we were going to add to the show. And it kept getting put off, and then we just kind of ran out of time, and we never got to do it. And that was one that made me sad, that especially since I knew Conan loved the idea. And I think he would have been really funny doing a British version of himself,
There was also, like, Wasn't there a Bob Odenkirk sketch where he likes the predecessor to Conan, or he did a version of Conan with Bob Odenkirk?
Maybe the amount of stuff I couldn't. Andy talked about this too. When they would show like a retrospective, and they would show things, and Andy would say, I remember about a third of those things. There are so many things where he's in a costume, he's whatever. No recollection of that bit at all, because there were just so many things. And people would say things to me about monologue jokes that I wrote and things. And I'm like, I don't remember that. And then I look it up and I think, oh, sure enough. I watched a Dr. Katz that I did recently, and there were jokes coming out of my mouth that I had never heard before in my life. And obviously I had spoken them and I said them, but I wasn't even remotely familiar.
Well, that's what I loved about Dr. Katz growing up as a kid, is I get to see my favorite comedians do jokes and then see visual representations of it. Like watching Colin Meaney, scream about the fire, the barbecue. I know how to handle the fires.
Absolutely. And that was fun. Like, it never occurred to me to picture myself as a cartoon. So I got that cartoon cell and it was framed in our den, and my son was 9 months old, and every day he would point at that picture and laugh. And I don't know what, there's something inherently funny about cartoons, I guess, but his little 9-year-old baby brain would look at it and just crack up. I don't know if he knew that it was me. It was so fascinating to me.
When running for a network TV show, I mean, things are different now. Like, you can get away with so much on so many other networks, and you're pretty much a clean comedian. So I don't think you ever had problems with standards and practices, but was there ever somebody on the show that you worked with who consistently just kept getting shut down because, like, too dirty, too bad, can't do it, too dark? Is there anyone that had problems with standards and practices?
Oh, yes. Well, that was, for me, the hard, when I shifted to Ellen. So after doing 27 years on late night to go to a daytime, I pitched things in the Ellen writer's room, and they'd go, ha, 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 we can't do that. And I was like, what? That's so ridiculous. And there was this one thing, there was a story about, there was some beach in Spain that they were saying was being ruined because so many people go into this beach to have sex that it was ruining the beach with this strewn with condoms. It's, all this stuff. So I pitched this idea of a reporter reporting from that beach, and you just hear the loud sounds of sex just wafting into the frame. And they were like, yeah, we can't do that.
Like, I have the same problem with Boston Duck Doors. Like, I'm just naturally subversive. So I shy away from, like, the jokes that everyone else in my group is doing or the other tour guys are doing. I'm trying to find creative, original jokes that are also in my very dark tone. And just keep getting shut down by the trainers who are like, no, Dennis, you cannot. Please stop referring to Paul Revere as the Elon Musk of the revolution. Or...
That's so funny.
Please don't call The Departed, starring Leonardo DiCaprio and locally known racist Mark Wahlberg. Stop saying those things. Like, I have a whole Boston, like, I've written almost an entire, at least a 45-minute tour of Boston that is a roast of Boston history tour.
That should be its own tour. It's like, come on, there should be a midnight dark tour that people know what they're in for.
Like all the people who roll their eyes when you hear somebody mention Tom Brady, that tour is for you. The roast of Boston is for you. Like, sure. I talked about, there's a Robert Gronkowski donated $1.2 million to build a playground. And my joke for it was, hey, you can learn to jump, you can learn to climb, you can learn to be just like Robert Gronkowski and abandon Boston just like he did. And they're like, no, put a stop to that. No, do not abandon us. Right now, what is like with the strike going on? I mean, I don't know if you're I think, what's your opinion on the strike? Obviously, everyone is for the side of more money, but Did we schedule a time today that took it away from your time pick on the picket line? I'm sorry, I didn't mean to not help you represent.
Yes, I went yesterday, and I had friends say, "Okay, we want to meet tomorrow at 11." And I'm like, I have to do a podcast. I can't join you. So yes, you got me. You lured me away from the picket line. And today actually would be a good day because it's overcast. It's it's going to be 95 degrees here soon. It's going to be a bummer.
Yeah, it is. But so what's the front lines of the strike looking like from somebody who literally your livelihood comes from writing?
Yes. And, I've been through this before. We did it in 2007 and the beginning of 2008. We were out of work for 3.5 months. So, and that was, we were in New York and it was freezing, December and January, as you can imagine. I'm not on a show at the moment, so that is good in that sense. The problem is the things that I'm writing, and I can't pitch a show now, until the strike ends. So, there's nothing, for the foreseeable future that I can do television wise. I can go out and do stand up, and that's what I've been doing. But it's the two sides seem very far apart, and it's also the kind of thing of, you like to think that you're in control of your life, but when you get into television, you realize there are much bigger forces at work that you're just, you're not in charge of your life, So I hope it gets resolved soon. I'm not optimistic though. This could be a long one.
Well, I think the worst thing that came out of the 2007 strike was reality TV. Say what you want about it. I mean, most of it to me is garbage, and it's not even reality. It's manufactured reality.
Yes. And it's funny because my daughter loves it, and I can't be in the room. She's watching Vanderpump Rules or something, and I'm like, I can't be in the room for this. It just makes me nauseous. But I know some people love it, but yeah, I think there's so many good, well-written, scripted shows. That's what I love. I love watching Succession and Barry and Better Call Saul or whatever. There's so many good things.
So good.
So good. Yes. That to have
He's amazing.
Yes.
Bill Hader does not it's unfair how much talent Bill Hader has. It's unfair. Share it with everyone else, Bill Hader.
I know, and then you have these shows where you have these two people screaming at each other over whatever. It's like,
and that's what I worry about with this strike is we're gonna get more of that. Like the problem is people don't care how the shows are made or what goes into them. They just want to watch them.
Well, the idea of robots or whatever writing dialogue, writing song, writing music, writing, everything is terrifying,
Well, the late 90s, early 2000s reminded me of when people were screaming for digital music and the music industry didn't give it to them. So what did they do? They went to Napster. They went to LimeWire. If the music industry had made music digitally accessible to people, they would never have pirated it. And similar in this way where people want the shows and they want the content. If you just give them a show, they're going to watch it. Hopefully we can give them something good and we can put people to work and create a good product, but people are going to just watch things regardless, probably likely. And then what's going to come of it? The people who want quality, then that's what they're going to do. They're going to put out I think this is disappointing. I would hope Disney would have been the company that was going to be the ones that with all of the content they have, they're usually, from what I can always tell, is pretty good about acquiring a thing and then letting people make that thing and not being too much involved with it. They just hire Kevin Feige, go make movies. They hire Jon Favreau, go make Star Wars TV shows. Dave Filoni, go make Star Wars TV shows. And they don't interfere. They just let those guys make good quality things. But they came out with a whole ABC lineup that is just reruns and reality shows and game shows. And it's like, Disney, you could have been the one that put an end to this. You can be like, hey, I was hoping they would be the ones that build the bridge, because a lot of this is really because of the streamers. It's the streamers who've been getting away, as far as I know. Please, you're involved with all this more than I am, but it seems like the streamers are the ones who have all this control and power right now, and they're high on their own petards or their own hubris, where they're like, hey, we don't want to pay writers. Like, I've heard so many people talk about going from network to streamer and back and forth, and it's like networks were paying, and then streamers weren't, and then now networks are finding out, oh, streamers are underpaying, now we're going to underpay. And it's like, this technology should be a betterment for all of mankind when it comes to entertainment, and it just seems like their greed is getting in the way.
And, you know, being a television writer is a great job. I think people don't realize how long your hours are. And, you know, it's if you're on a network show, you can't work another job, you know, and because you're just in the writer's room all the time, you know. So I think they're really being ridiculous with they're making a ton of money. They're, you know, especially if you've got you know, it's so hard to get one of those jobs, and to just people shouldn't be making, you know, with any job, people shouldn't be making less than they were 20 years ago.
Great point.
You know?
Adam Conifer was saying or was it Adam Conifer or one of the writers was saying, I heard in another podcast talking about a 20-year experienced writers making the same amount of money as somebody who's doing writing for their very first year. And there's a huge disparity between that. And that's in all rights is unjust.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. And you can take anybody, you go to whatever that job they have and say, well, how about if you were making what you were making 20 years ago? People are going, you know, with inflation and all 20 years experience and all that stuff. I don't think any industry does that, you know?
I mean, my very first job was at Camden Yards at Oriole Park at Camden Yards.
Wow.
Selling Italian iced tea and lemonade. I left that job to work in an Italian pastry shop as a busboy, making $3 an hour. I would leave that job and go to Home Depot pushing shopping carts for $7 an hour. And I was like, I'm making almost two and a half times more money. I thought it was a huge idea. And then I turned to somebody else like, $7 an hour. This is great. They're like, I make 12. 7 is garbage. I'm like, wait, what? There's people make more than $7 an hour? I didn't know that. And if I was making $7 an hour now, I would go insane. Like, I'm making, like, the hourly I make at Boston Duck Tours is what I was making 10 years ago, 12 years ago.
Yeah.
And the only reason I've taken that job is because it's for the tips.
Yep.
You know?
Yep.
So I'm going backwards financially in my career for the hopes of more financial gain, which should be the progression of anyone in an industry working at a job. Is like, you start out low, and as you go on, your pay should increase because your experience and your worth, your value has become more valuable to the company.
Right. And if you're not good at your job, you're going to be weeded out because there's so much competition. So I don't see why, you know, those people should be rewarded, you know?
Yeah, especially when I listen to a lot of podcasts about writers. I listen to a lot of writing for someone who does zero writing, but I listen to writers talk about how they have to plan what shows they're going to be on so they have an income. Because, you know, you get in a writer's room and you work from, you know, January to April on one show, and then they go to filming, and now you're no longer writing. So now from May to August, you have to pick up another show that's supposed to premiere in the fall or start working in the fall. So then you have to write for that show, and then you have to write a wintertime show. And it's like, you have to pick up 2 or 3 shows every year in a cycle to try and like continuously have an income. And there's no reassurance that you're going to have that.
Right. I think what people don't realize is it's very difficult to jump from one show to the next. You know, your show ends, most shows, you know, you don't have an in with the next show to get in, or you know, it's very hard to get one job, never mind multiple jobs, you know?
Yeah, especially since like if you're a freelancer, that's one thing. You're always hustling for work. But when you're a writer on a show, you're not technically freelance. You're an employee. It's just your job only lasts for a few months. Now with Conan, or talk shows, you know, late night shows and talk shows, they go out through the entire year. Their seasons are continual. You get a couple breaks here and there. Like, John Oliver takes off for, 3 months out of the year, a month in the summer, a month in the winter, and a month here. So his writers are constantly working throughout the year for the most part of having small little sabbaticals. But for most writers on like scripted shows, that's not the scenario that works for them. It's you work for a couple months to write a season and then bang, you're out. If you're even lucky to be writing that. Some of it, I even hear the horror stories of they hire you just to write an episode and thank you. We broke all the story. You write this script and you're out.
Yep. Oh, there's a lot of that. Yep. Yes, absolutely. So, well, yeah, I'm hoping it gets resolved soon,
All right. Well, I appreciate you taking your time and going through it. Sorry we couldn't meet face to face between the airplane issues and my, honestly, if you would have saw me Saturday, it was like this. It was so bad. My voice was so bad. This is literally the improvement. And I got to go start doing tours again tomorrow. It's going to be a rough week.
Oh boy.
I'm glad you took the time. And I do hope that the strike ends and that you get back to pitching and that you find the show, you get to run the show that you've been wanting to do this whole time.
Oh, that would be a dream. I'll tell you. Yeah, get that rumor started. That's happening.
And hopefully I'll be back. I'll be down in LA this winter when everything's back to normal and we can do a flapper show together or get lunch together.
Yeah, that would be great. I would love that.
Lunch this time won't be, it won't be Wendy's fast food drive-through like it was in North Carolina.
That's right.
Just in the car eating.
That's right.
Just shoveling square burgers in our face like, we got to get back to the show.
They told us there'd be food at the gig, and I showed them. They go, "Oh, there's no food." It's like, wait.
There was food. It just ran out before you got there.
Okay, all right.
There was food. I had some of it. All right, Brian. Have fun on your strike tomorrow. Oh, what are you going to write on your picket sign tomorrow when you go back to the picket line?
Oh, it's funny. There are people that bring their own signs. I always just get there and pick up one. I was on the picket line yesterday, so it's like, hey, that's my sign. I had to give them their sign. So I always have to check.
Don't steal my Instagram, WGA East Instagram worthiness.
Yes. So I have to be careful of what signs I'm picking.
Awesome. All right. Well, this was great talking to you. I'm glad we got to call up on your full backstory.
Thanks. It was a lot of fun. I'm sorry I have so much free time. Hopefully next time I'll be busy on the show.